G'day everyone, welcome to another CSBP Fertilisers Market Update. I'm Grey Johnston and joined as ever by our Sales Strategy and Reliability Manager, Ben Sudlow. Hello Ben.
G'day Grey.
Since we last caught up, the Indian tender has been finalised or near finalised. Can you, I guess, give us an update as to what has happened on that topic? Very relevant in the West Australian nitrogen market at the moment.
Yeah, so when we last spoke about the Indian tender, the tender had been put out, none of the numbers were clear then. Closing date of the tender was the 8th of April. Tender numbers were put in. Now remembering they were looking for about 1.5 million tonnes, the Indians, in this tender. Traders put all their volumes or likely volumes, there's a whole lot of double up in volumes in there, and there was 3.5 million tonnes sort of nominally put into the tender east-west coast of India. That doesn't mean that the market's long by a couple of million tonnes. It means there's a flood of traders putting in tonnes. They're often counting the same tonnes coming from the same producers. What had happened prior to that, prices had drifted down before the tender announced. The tender announced, and that just saw prices move up a little bit, because that, I think everyone saw that as the likelihood was going to be the floor might be. And as we spoke about last time, was the Indian tender typically over-exaggerated prices, potentially down or up. So everyone's sitting going, what are the prices going to be? There was 23 suppliers put in prices to the tender, and they ranged in price from at the bottom end just over 370 up to about 412, I think it is, FOB equivalent.
That's US dollar pricing.
US dollar prices, thank you, Grey. Important distinction. So big range, but bottom end was probably where the market was, but the top end was much beyond that. The Indians then have accepted the lowest tranche of price, initially booked 600,000 tonnes into the tender, and they've gone back for a second round of offers. Over the weekend, it looks like there's about another couple of 100,000 tonnes in. So they've got 800,000 tonne of their 1.5 million. The question now is, will that be enough? Because producers are not prepared to go down to those prices, or will, in fact, India have to come back again and try and get it at the higher price? The reality of the actual spot market is, as the prices went down, maybe the floor's there. You've seen a whole lot of markets rushing to try and get volumes, including Australia, and not just West, but a lot of East Coast of Australia looking for urea at the moment. And other markets are saying, okay, the bottom's in for now. We need these cargoes. We need to get volume, because we'll be fighting with India for those cargoes into April and May and early June. So flood of spot market has seen the actual real spot price move up, and it's compared with the bottom price of the Indian tender to where the spot market is probably about 15 to 20 US higher than what the bottom of the Indian tender price was.
So the upshot of that across the, say, 2-week period since we've last looked is almost no movement in the overall spot market. Is that really the way to interpret it?
Yeah, if you're lucky enough to buy that very, very small dip, yes. If you average out where we are back now on the actual spot market, it's sort of no real difference in US dollar FOB terms.
So no difference in US FOB over that period of time, and the Indian tender does appear to have put something of a floor in the urea market. The other big two factors then that I guess people will be really concerned about are, can we actually get the product? Is it available into WA? And of course in WA we have to pay in Aussie dollars, and that probably the second of those is the first one of those to tackle, which is in the 2-week period we've discussed, we've also seen some fun and games in the foreign exchange market as an outcome of the various Trump tariffs or otherwise. Can you tell us, and we've clearly been watching it pretty closely, how the wave of Forex movements has then flowed through to landed Aussie dollar pricing over the last couple of weeks?
At the moment, we're buying a lot of urea sort of week to week, because there's a lot of cargoes to come. One day we're thinking we're going to get a 63.5 cent dollar, and then the next day it's under 60. And look, we know roughly a cent's worth about 10 to 15 Aussie dollars a tonne. So it's just, you take it when you got to take it, and accepting that means in terms of landed cost, there's still some volatility on what your landed costs are based on where the exchange rate is or is likely to be over the next couple of weeks or month, and who knows what that's going to be.
And so the upshot of that from the CSBP perspective is we've got good availability of product to contract to deliver into the market in May, June and July. Pricing on that, our list price is $840 a tonne, and remember that's a list price for a small volume of collection on the day. Contact your local account manager for a more sophisticated bundler pricing or for larger volume pricing. But we've got product available to contract, and as you say, we've got ships loading and on their way to West Australia now.
And look, the important point, Grey, for now, look, we'd like the price to be lower, we'd like them to be more affordable, but right now it's about getting ships and getting them here on time. The urea season seemingly looks like it's going to be earlier, and we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. I know we're now on Monday morning, there's a lot of rain through the eastern part of the wheat belt, Great Southern and along the south coast over last night, on top of the rain that those areas have had before. You know, that seems increasingly likely that it's going to be an earlier application season of nitrogen, particularly in those southern ports and the southern part of the Kwinana zone. And having a lot of ships now coming, it's to make sure we get them here. And we're in a very privileged position on those ships is that we've got a lot of them, and we can start looking about where we can change the rotation of those ships to different ports depending on where demand is. And that's something that we're looking at our plans every day to make sure that we can make the best decisions about where that demand's going to come from.
Ben, you mentioned the rainfall that we've seen in the last couple of days and the last couple of weeks since we caught up, and in particular, the Esperance region has seen some good rainfall, which is positive for farmers, and as you said, we'll be able to divert urea ships there. The one confounding factor in Esperance particularly is a port shutdown that is going to occur sort of late May, early June. Can you tell us a bit about how that may impact our ability to bring urea through?
The Esperance berth is shut from the last week of May through to the first week of June. Clearly that hits a large time in terms of urea starting to really go up and out on farm. Perhaps that's now going to come a little bit earlier. So we're trying to get ships down there ahead of that shut, get space in our sheds to try and meet that need. But trying to manage ourselves around that is going to be critically important, particularly if demand is going to move perhaps slightly earlier. If not, any advice about timing and volume is going to help us manage ourselves around that Esperance port shut.
So we're in a good position then, Ben, to bring urea volumes in to suit what the actual physical requirement is going to be. But of course that relies on a couple of things, making sure we got good insight from customers as to when they're going to need product and particularly at what location. And as you say, you'll be able to adjust the shipping program to meet that supply, but also then getting cropping phosphates and those early urea tranches out of our sheds and into farmer sheds and onto paddocks in order to be able to keep the volume flowing through our facilities. So I guess the ask from CSBP is make sure that if people do need product, they get their contracts in and make sure that contracts are in the right month and at the right location so that we can supply the physical need. And then if product is contracted, come in and get it. We've got opening hours that are extended to facilitate that demand, and we can continue to extend hours as the demand continues to ramp up. Because we've talked a lot about urea, but there's still quite a lot of cropping phosphates that need to be collected to put a crop in.
Yeah, I mean, those, particularly the two southern ports, we see if we can get phosphates out, which allows us space, get that out onto farm as quick as possible, clear some shed space, we can then divert more urea in early, knowing that and Gran and S in early, so we can hit the nitrogen sulphur first top up, and then any indication that the demand's going to be there in those locations at this size, we can really swing volume to those ports as quick as can and try and be ahead of it.
And we've talked a lot about nitrogen there and touched a little bit on cropping phosphates. We've still got good availability of product to contract if people are thinking about putting extra paddocks in?
Yes, there is, Grey. We've still got the granulation plant running. We've got our last ammonium phosphate vessel here now unloading. That's the last of the year in terms of arrival. So it's here, it's available, and look, if there's, again, same thing, if there's any indication of you needing more, getting onto it quickly, because if there's more paddocks going in or there's any late season demand, the earlier indications are better. We can run the granulation plant longer for different types of product as well. So anything around that can certainly help us.
So in summary, we're really pleased to see the rainfall across a large part of the growing area. It means the fertiliser season is shaping up to be possibly quite substantial, and CSBP is doing everything it can in its power to make sure product is available and at the right place at the right time. We've extended opening hours, and those opening hours are all up to date on our website and on our social media. So we've made appointment space available, and we really encourage people to get their appointments in and come and collect product. We've talked Indian tender, we've talked local availability and local supply. Anything else we should be touching on, Ben?
Probably got about right, Grey. Maybe some rain in the Geraldton zone, some good solid rain in the Geraldton zone. Get that zone really going as well, and it could be a very big one in time to keep up with the near-term demand.
Okay, on that bombshell, we'll wrap it up. Thank you all out there in fertiliser world, and thank you, Ben. We'll see you all again in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.
This podcast is provided as general information only. The content of this podcast is not a recommendation and has been prepared without taking your objectives or circumstances into account. Before acting on the content of this, you should consider its appropriateness to your circumstances and seek independent advice.